Have you ever felt like time is a prison? Like the days go by but nothing really changes? Maybe it's because you're trapped in the biggest myth of our existence. Time. Yes, time. It's not what you think. What if I told you there's a way to escape this illusion? To finally live without being a slave to the ticking hands of the clock? In this video, I'm going to show you how existing outside of time might be the key to the freedom you didn't even know you were searching for. Imagine for a moment that everything you believe you are, your name, your memories, your personality, is nothing more than a grand trick of imagination. What if the story of your life, from birth to death, was just part of a cosmic misunderstanding? A tale everyone accepted as true, but deep down, was never real. Strange, right? Sounds like the plot of a science fiction movie. But hold on, before dismissing this as impossible, why not give this idea a chance? It might reveal something you never imagined about who you really are. Now don't worry, we're not saying that your body or the physical world don't exist. The point here is something else. It's about seeing what lies behind what you believe yourself to be. Have you ever stopped to think that this sense of separation between you and everything else might just be an illusion? And more, that maybe you and the universe are inseparable, like two sides of the same coin. Physicist John Wheeler, a man who challenged the limits of what we think we know, put it well. You are not who you think you are. You're not just a human being trying to understand the world or achieve something greater. You are the very consciousness where everything happens. Think about ocean waves. Each one seems unique, right? One forms, another crashes, while yet another is already on its way. But in the end, they're all part of the same ocean. The wave never stopped being the ocean, and the ocean never stopped being the wave. The same goes for us. This idea might seem abstract, but it's quite simple. If there's no separation, there's no end. And if there's no end, what is there to fear or lose? But hold on, this isn't just bedtime philosophy. It's something you can experience right now, if you allow yourself to look beyond what you've always believed. Let's explore this different perspective together, question certainties, and maybe discover something new about what it means to be you. So have you ever asked yourself who you really are? When you think about yourself, what comes to mind? Maybe, I'm a father, I'm a teacher, I'm an artist, or any other role you play. But what if you're more than that? From a young age, we're taught to believe in a self that's separate from the rest. We learn to carry this self as a fixed identity, as if it's the center of everything. But is that really true? And if it's not, what remains? Let's find out. Have you ever stopped to think about the water in a glass? It seems like something separate, right? But what if you pour it into the ocean? Where does it go? Can you pinpoint the exact moment when it stops being glass water and becomes part of the sea? It's fascinating how this idea ties into the notion of the self. Everything we call me, thoughts, memories, sensations, is like the water in the glass. It has always been part of something greater, even when it seems separate. But for some reason, we cling to the idea that we're isolated. We spend our lives protecting this self, nurturing it, and fearing its loss. Have you ever thought about that? This is my body, my thought, my life. But is it really? Take a closer look. The body is constantly changing. The cells in your skin, your organs, even your brain, are renewed over time. The body you have today isn't the same as it was 10 years ago. So how can we claim it's truly us? And what about thoughts? They're even more fleeting. One moment you're happy, the next, sad. Yesterday you were sure about something, but today, doubt has crept in. And beliefs, what once seemed unquestionable, can change in an instant. If all of this is so transient, do thoughts really define who we are? Now let me propose something. Imagine a thought arises. It could be something like, I'm afraid. Where exactly is that fear? In your body? In your mind? Or is it just a sensation, like a cloud slowly passing across the sky? When we stop clinging to it, we realize that no matter how uncomfortable it might be, it loses the power it once had over us. This reflection reminds me of something John Wheeler said. He explained that what we commonly call the self, this personality filled with limitations and conflicts, is nothing more than a mental construct. It's made up of memories and assumptions about the future. So if we're not this self, then what are we? Think about the space in a room. No matter what's inside it, furniture, people, objects, the space itself remains unchanged. It doesn't alter, no matter what happens. We are like that space. The true essence of who we are is the awareness in which everything happens. Thoughts, emotions, experiences, they arise and fade, like waves in the ocean. But awareness, like the sea, remains. So who are you, really? At the moment we let go of the illusion of the self, something truly transformative happens. It's like releasing a weight we didn't even know we were carrying. Suddenly, the need to label ourselves, to say, I am this, or I am that, simply vanishes. That's when we realize a powerful truth. Our essence is limitless, free, and boundless. And you know what's even more curious? This illusory self isn't a villain, nor does it have bad intentions. It's just a misunderstanding, a mistake we've constructed over time. But when we see through it, a universe of possibilities reveals itself. And this realization is only the beginning. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who are you, really? The obvious answers don't count, like I'm a human being, or I'm a mix of mind, body, and experiences. Let's go deeper. What's left when you strip away the labels, the social roles, and the stories you tell about yourself? Who are you, at your core? Here's something to think about. Our thoughts, for instance, are like clouds. They come and go, appearing out of nowhere and disappearing without asking permission. One minute you're thinking about what to have for dinner. The next, you're remembering a conversation from yesterday. And then comes the big question, who is observing these thoughts? If you can observe your thoughts, that means you are not your thoughts. You are the observer, the one behind it all, watching the unfolding of ideas, feelings, and moments. This awareness, silent, constant, is what truly remains. It's there in your moments of joy, in your moments of sadness, and even in the emptiness between one thought and another. Now, think about something interesting. When you feel anger, you often say, I am angry. But is that anger truly you? Or is it just an energy passing through you, like a storm that arises and eventually dissipates? Just as the sky is not the storm, you are not the anger or any other fleeting emotion. The sky remains intact, even after the worst of storms. And we are like that sky, always present, despite the changes around us. And what about the physical body? It seems so concrete, so ours, doesn't it? But it's constantly changing too. Cells die, new ones are born. Our appearance evolves over time. The body you have today is entirely different from the one you had as a child. Can it truly define who you are? Now how about taking an even bolder step? Forget searching for answers in your mind. Instead, feel what has always been there, unchanging. That thing is consciousness, silent, constant, beyond thoughts and emotions. It doesn't age, doesn't change, and doesn't need explanations. It simply is. And the most incredible part is that this consciousness isn't something you need to find. It's already here, now, as the foundation of your existence. It doesn't need proof or complicated words to be perceived. All it takes is a moment of silence to feel it. Have you tried? Imagine you're in a dark room with just one lit candle. The flame's light illuminates everything around it but never needs to illuminate itself. Why? Because it is light. Now think about this. What if your consciousness is exactly like that? It doesn't need to see itself or prove itself because it simply is. This idea might seem profound, but it's actually quite simple. John Wheeler described consciousness as the true essence of who we are, something that never changes, that has always been and will always be there. No matter what you're feeling, thinking, or experiencing, this consciousness remains untouched. It's not affected by emotional storms, mental wanderings, or the wear and tear of the body. It's free, it's constant, it's you. That's consciousness, the point of observation that witnesses everything without becoming involved. Are you sure you know who you are? What if everything you believe about yourself is just an illusion? Have you ever considered that you might have never truly been born? It sounds crazy, but this idea could change everything. Get ready to question reality and see life in a completely new way. So often, we desperately seek a wake-up call, that feeling of finally understanding everything about life. But what if there's nothing to search for? What if what you're trying to find is already here? This consciousness that observes, that doesn't suffer, that doesn't change. It's already yours. It always has been. Want to experience it? Try a simple exercise. Close your eyes for a minute and just observe your breathing. Don't control it. Simply notice the air flowing in and out. Now, shift your focus. Instead of paying attention to the breath itself, observe the consciousness that's aware of the act of breathing. Can you sense it? This consciousness isn't trying to do anything, isn't trying to be anything, isn't seeking anything. It's just there, present. And here's the great insight. You're not just a person who experiences moments of consciousness. You are consciousness itself. All those things that seem so big and important, thoughts, feelings, the roles we play in daily life, are like clouds passing across the sky. But the sky, that infinite backdrop, remains untouched. Have you ever imagined what it would be like to live with this perception? To relax and let those thoughts and emotions fade, allowing you to connect with what has always been there. Once this happens, you can't unsee it. Life changes because you realize you are so much more than your story, your memories, or any label that has been placed on you. Now think about something curious. What if we had never actually been born? Sounds strange, right? After all, we have childhood photos, family stories, even a birth certificate. But all of that is part of a narrative, not our essence. What we truly are goes far beyond these stories. Have you ever considered how tightly we cling to these ideas of who we think we are? And what if this separation between me and everything else was just an illusion? I'll leave you with this thought. What deeper truth could exist that challenges everything we believe about ourselves? Have you ever stopped to think about the idea that we were born? It seems obvious, right? After all, we're here, living, existing. But here's something interesting. What if our true essence had no beginning and no end? It might sound contradictory, but it makes sense when we reflect on how our true nature goes far beyond time. It's as if our essence were infinite, unchanging, something that has always been and will always be here. And that's the point. Believing we were born leads us to construct an idea of self based on a name, a story, and memories. But are we really just that? Can we summarize who we are in a biography? Absolutely not. We are so much more. We are the consciousness in which this entire story unfolds. Think about it. Do you remember your childhood? Your body was tiny, your thoughts were simple, and the world felt enormous, yet it only stretched as far as your eyes could see. Over time, everything changed. Your body, your ideas, your perceptions. But did everything really change? There's something that has never moved. A constant, silent presence that has always observed everything. This consciousness, beyond all changes, is your true essence. Now here's the part that might blow your mind. This consciousness didn't begin when your body was born, and it won't end when your body ceases to exist. It's like a movie screen. The film changes, scenes come and go, but the screen remains untouched. What happens in the film doesn't affect the screen. When we understand this, it brings a sense of relief and immense freedom. Most of our suffering stems from the belief that we are this self that was born, feels pain, and will one day disappear. But what if this self is just a creation of our mind, an illusion? When we realize this, worries and fears start to fade away, like fog dissolving under the sun. Here's a question that might turn your worldview upside down. If you were never truly born, can you really die? What would you have to lose? This reflection, which John Wheeler calls supreme liberation, reveals that you are not bound by the chains of time, space, or form. You are the consciousness where everything happens, like clouds passing through the sky. And the sky itself, it never changes. Thoughts, they come and go like waves in the ocean. But the awareness that recognizes these thoughts, does it change? Does it ever disappear? Number, it's always the same, stable, untouched by the chaos around it. And when we understand this, we realize we are not the story we tell ourselves. We are the space where everything unfolds. Being unborn doesn't mean denying life. It means understanding that our essence is beyond the body, mind, and experiences. It's a way of living more lightly, without fear, without that sense of separation from the world. Have you ever thought about the ego? It seems to be our essence, that little inner voice narrating everything, trying to convince us that we are something separate from the rest. But here's something curious. If you close your eyes right now and think, I am, is that really a solid truth, or just another fleeting thought? The ego is made of memories, beliefs, and desires, and none of these fragments are permanent. They come and go, but something within you remains the same. That awareness is your true self, free, eternal, and far beyond what we usually imagine. Have you ever stopped to think about how unstable the ego is? One moment, it convinces you that you can conquer the world. The next, it makes you believe nothing ever works out for you. Strange, isn't it? If the ego were truly your essence, wouldn't it be something more constant? Exactly. But it changes all the time, influenced by thoughts and circumstances. And that raises the question, can what you truly are be something so volatile? Now think with me. Is there something within you that has always been there, regardless of what happens? Something that simply observes, untouched by the storms of thoughts or emotions? That something is your true essence. Philosopher John Wheeler used to say that the ego is really just a story we tell ourselves. It's like a script we create, full of certainties, doubts, victories, and defeats. We give so much importance to this narrative that we end up believing it defines us. But does it really? Have you ever tried looking closely at this story, questioning it? Where does the ego reside? In the head, the chest, the heart? And what if it isn't something physical at all, but merely an idea? Notice how our thoughts come and go. They appear, linger for a while, and then fade away, like clouds in the sky. If our essence were made only of thoughts, we would cease to exist every time one disappeared. But you remain, even when your mind falls silent. This shows that the ego is like a shadow. It seems real but lacks substance. The problem is that when we believe in this shadow, we start feeling small, separated from the world, trapped in a limited story. And here's the breakthrough. Realizing that the ego isn't who you truly are. This realization changes everything. The next time you feel anxiety, anger, or fear creeping in, don't rush to fix or ignore these emotions. Instead, ask a simple question. Who is feeling all of this? Usually the automatic answer is, I am. But who is this I? Can you point to it, describe it, or define it? Emotions are real, of course. We feel them deeply. But the I that claims to feel them is much harder to grasp, isn't it? The ego is like someone watching a movie, so immersed in the story that they forget it's just a film. But once you realize it's all just an act, the plot loses its grip on you. You understand that you're not the character, but the one observing it all. So, how about trying this out? The next time your mind spirals into chaos, take a pause, observe, question, and maybe you'll realize that your essence is so much more than any story the ego tries to tell. Have you ever stopped to think that understanding the ego doesn't have to be an impossible task or a constant battle? John Wheeler explains that it's not about fighting the ego or trying to eliminate it. The question is simple, understanding what it truly is. The ego is nothing more than a trick of the mind, an illusion. And when we realize this, it loses its power. It's like letting go of a heavy backpack you've been carrying around for no reason. Can you imagine the relief that brings? Take a deep breath now. Let go of this idea of I that you've been trying so hard to protect. Just allow yourself to be here, to be who you already are, effortlessly. There's a natural calm that's always there, steady and unshakable, no matter what. That's your true essence. A simple, yet powerful truth that has always been with you, just waiting to be noticed. The ego was never real. And you were never trapped. Think about this. What would it be like to live without that incessant voice in your head saying, I need this, or I'm afraid of that? Without the burden of always feeling limited by the I, imagine a life where things simply flow, without the constant need to control everything. Sounds liberating, doesn't it? Now, take a look at your daily routine. Have you noticed how much energy we spend trying to be seen in a certain way, achieving things, or avoiding problems? But who is this you that's working so hard? When we look closely, it's just a story, a collection of thoughts we've learned to believe in. What if you took a step back? Your heart keeps beating, your lungs keep breathing, and your mind keeps processing, all without you having to do a thing. Life just happens. It's like a river. The water doesn't ask for permission to flow. It moves naturally. Even the thought, I made this happen, is just another part of the flow, like a wave in the ocean trying to separate itself from it, yet still part of the ocean's movement. Think about something simple, like making a decision. We think it all depends on us, that we're in control. But when you stop and notice, choices arise naturally, guided by circumstances. There's no effort required. It's almost as if decisions are happening on their own, without this controlling I in charge. John Wheeler offers an intriguing perspective. The ego is just a habit, a mental construct. So in those moments of stress or doubt, ask yourself, who is really feeling this? Is there truly someone behind these emotions? Or is it just a collection of passing thoughts and sensations? When you realize there's no real self behind all of this, something changes. Stress still shows up, of course, but you don't identify with it as much. You start seeing thoughts and feelings like clouds in the sky. They come, pass, and fade away. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect or free of challenges, but you approach everything with more ease. Without the weight of the ego, things just flow. Have you noticed how we tend to label everything we feel as mine? When sadness arises, it quickly becomes my sadness. And joy? Oh, that doesn't escape either. It's my joy, as if we have to keep it in a jar so it doesn't slip away. But what if we simply felt it, without attachment? It sounds strange, but in practice, this doesn't turn you into a robot without emotions. On the contrary, it adds more color to life, making everything more vibrant and real. Just imagine letting go of that constant monologue the ego loves to maintain. You know, that internal filter telling you how things should be. Without it, you start seeing life as it truly is, without the extra drama. Have you thought about how much relief that could bring? Let me give you a practical example. Think about when someone criticizes you. Normally the ego jumps in, ready to defend itself. The result? Tension, conflict, a massive headache. But if you realize you don't have to protect this self all the time, what happens to the criticism? It's just a leaf falling to the ground, light, weightless. This shift happens when you stop taking everything personally and see things for what they are. And you know what's the coolest part? Life keeps flowing, no matter what the ego thinks. It's like being on a train. You don't have to keep telling the conductor how to drive. The train moves along its path, and you realize you're not the driver. You're just another passenger. When you stop trying to control everything, you start seeing the interconnectedness of all things. That separation between me and the other, it disappears. And then you understand, everything is connected. Everything is part of the same consciousness. What if everything you believe about who you are is just an illusion? What if the self you guard so fiercely doesn't even exist? While you try to control life, it flows effortlessly on its own, without asking for your permission. Letting go of control might feel terrifying, but what if it's the key to true freedom? Are you ready to face the question that could change everything? Who are you, really? True freedom isn't about doing whatever you want, but about letting go of the illusion that you're separate from the rest of the world. Doesn't that feel like a breath of fresh air? You don't have to do anything to make it happen. You just allow yourself to notice. The wind blows, the river flows, and you are the consciousness where it all unfolds. This idea of living without a separate self might seem distant or even uncomfortable at first. After all, we've grown up believing we are this self that thinks, feels, and decides. And then the question arises, if there's no self, who's living this life? It's a fair doubt because our experiences feel so real, right? But if you look closely, you'll notice that life happens on its own. Thoughts arise, emotions come and go, actions take place. Everything flows spontaneously. When we try to find this self, guess what shows up? Nothing but an empty space, an unlimited awareness without an owner. To simplify, think of a whirlpool in a river. It seems like something separate, independent. But upon closer inspection, you realize it's just the movement of the river itself. The whirlpool was never something apart, just like our self has never been something isolated from life. You know that idea that the self is an independent, autonomous entity that controls everything? Well, that's just an illusion. The self is really like a flow of life that for a while takes shape in our awareness. And here comes the classic question. If I don't exist, how do I make decisions or navigate the world? This question comes from the belief that the ego is essential for living in society. But is it really? Think about it. Is the ego the boss that runs everything, like the one making your heart beat or deciding your next breath? Life happens naturally, without the self needing to control everything all the time. Yet we make decisions, take action, and move forward. It's like driving a car. At first, every movement requires total focus. You're tense, gripping the wheel, with your feet almost trembling on the pedals. But over time, Driving becomes natural, almost automatic. And life, it works the same way. When we stop trying to control every detail, things flow more smoothly. Now, you might think, but if I let go of control, won't life lose its meaning? That doubt comes from how we were raised. Since childhood, we've learned that life is only worthwhile if we achieve great things, if we stand out. But is that really the case? Is the true purpose of life found in what we do, or in the simple fact that we exist? Take the sun, for example. It doesn't need to justify its existence. It simply shines. And by doing so, it makes everything around it possible. Our awareness is the same. It doesn't need explanations. The simple fact that we're here is already full of meaning. And then comes another deep question. If there is no separate me, do I lose my importance? The ego loves being the center of attention, constantly seeking validation. But what if we could look beyond that need? When a drop of water merges with the ocean, it doesn't cease to exist, does it? It becomes part of something much greater. That's what happens when we let go of the ego. It's not that you disappear. Instead, you begin to see yourself as something boundless, connected to everything around you. In the end, letting go of this idea of absolute control doesn't mean losing the meaning of life. On the contrary, it means discovering that your true essence is already here, fully present in the simple act of being. Have you ever stopped to think about a common misconception? Many people believe that recognizing the absence of a self means losing what it means to be human. It sounds kind of scary, right? Like without this idea of identity, life would just be a series of automatic actions. No emotion, no purpose. But is that really true? Spoiler, not even close. In reality, when we stop clinging so tightly to the ego, something incredible happens. We make room for greater empathy and compassion. Without the constant need to protect or reaffirm who you think you are, a genuine connection with others arises. It's like letting the walls come down. Picture this. You're at the beach, watching the waves come and go, crashing against the sand and rocks. You don't try to control the ocean, you just observe it, feeling its vastness and beauty. Living without being attached to the self is just like that. It's about being fully present in life without trying to hold on to or shape it. Now here's the question. But what if I feel insecure during this process? What if I question everything? Insecurity in this case is more of an ally than an enemy. Have you ever asked yourself, who is it that feels insecure? Who is asking these questions? And when you search for the answer, you realize there's no one at the center of it all. The doubt simply fades away. And what's left? A profound truth that has always been there. The awareness of who you truly are. This awareness was never born, is never confined, and never goes away. It's here, always present. So take a deep breath, relax, and let it guide you. There's no mystery. The doubt disappears, but you remain. And now we've reached the crucial point. Who are you, really? Over the course of your life, you've probably questioned your stories, the roles you play, the limits you believe you have. And when all of that dissolves, what's left? The essence, that which is eternal, that has always been there. But hold on, this doesn't mean rejecting life or ignoring your experiences. Quite the opposite. This truth reveals itself precisely when you accept everything without labeling it as my problem or my achievement. It's like watching the waves of the ocean. They come, they go, they change, but the ocean remains, vast and serene. The big insight? You don't need to change your external life to understand this. There's no need to give anything up, renounce the world, or create something new. This essence is already here, ready, like the sky that needs nothing beyond itself. And do you know what happens when you realize this? That need to chase meaning, escape fear, or control everything begins to lose its grip. You simply accept what is, without the ego weighing down every step. Challenges stop being enemies and become just part of life's natural flow. In the end, recognizing your true nature feels like being freed from a heavy burden. It's living with more ease, more surrender, and above all, more freedom. How about reflecting on that? After all, who are you really? Have you ever stopped to think about how your mind is always full of noise? Those relentless thoughts, one after the other, creating a sense of confusion and restlessness. What if I told you that all this searching for answers and deeper meaning ends the moment you realize you were never truly lost? John Wheeler talks about this. The truth isn't out there, waiting to be discovered. It's always been right here, with you. It might sound strange at first, but think about it. What if you were never born in the conventional sense? Not as a separate body, but as something much greater, free from limitations and labels. This isn't about denying life, not at all. It's about seeing the freedom that has always been yours, even if you haven't realized it yet. So how about taking a break right now? Take a deep breath and feel the silence. Not the kind of silence when everything around you is still, but an inner silence that brings peace and clarity. This feeling isn't fleeting, nor is it some far-fetched idea. It's real, and it's here with you, right now. What happens if you start letting this truth guide you? How could it transform your fears, your relationships, and your way of living? The essence of being human isn't about seeking consciousness, because you already are that consciousness. It is free, it always has been. And the most incredible part? There's nothing to achieve, no final destination waiting for you, because at its core, there has never been any separation. You are already exactly where you're meant to be. What if you allowed this idea to unfold in your life? You know, getting here means a lot, like, truly. And it reminded me of a simple yet deeply meaningful scene. Imagine a starry night, one of those nights where you're lying on the grass, looking up at the sky, feeling a gentle breeze on your face. At first, you try to count the stars. Your mind races, searching for patterns, trying to make sense of it all. But then, something shifts. You stop. Something inside you urges you to just look, to simply feel. It's as if, for a fleeting moment, you remember something that's always been there, but somehow got forgotten. And I think that's what happened here today. You took the time to dive into something beyond the obvious, beyond the everyday noise. You looked inward, let the questions echo, and maybe even found a small pocket of silence amidst it all. That's rare, and it's invaluable. So I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for trusting me on this journey. Thank you for opening your mind and your heart. Because in the end, this exchange, this moment of reflection, is what truly matters. Before you go, let me ask you a small favor. As a friend, share what you felt in the comments. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, just something that stayed with you, like that one star in the sky that shines the brightest. And if this video resonated with you, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. That way, we can keep exploring these ideas together. Above all, remember this: you are the light that shines, even without seeing yourself. You are the sky that holds every cloud, but never stops being the sky. And that, my friend, is something no one can ever take from you. If any of these thoughts stirred something in you, don't stop here. The upcoming videos will dive even deeper into reflections that could transform the way you see life. Go check them out. I'll be waiting to continue this exchange with you. Are you in?